Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Q&A, the show where I take your questions and answer them here in video format. Ton of questions to get into, so let's just jump into it. By the way, if you want to make sure that you get your questions answered on the show or get a chance to get your questions answered on the show, keep an eye out on Sundays. Make sure you're subscribed and notified so that you can check the community tab on Sundays. I post the prompt for these questions up. And then I take the questions after about a couple of days and I do the video here. So if you want to make sure your voice is heard on the Q&A, make sure you subscribe, make sure you're notified, and then keep your eye on the community tab when I post the Q&A prompt picture every week. And I take the questions off of there. So just to clear up anything, if you have any questions about how to do that. Benelonian says, it seems like the media is expecting Cleveland to come back down to earth. Do we know how much higher field goal percentage is from better shot selection? This is something that's interesting because, like, sometimes, too, the Cavs shot selection is, like, kind of atrocious. Sometimes the shot selection is not as atrocious. I don't think it's because of better shot selection. I think it's because of better quality of shot, right? Like the Cavs are taking a lot of shots. Sometimes those shots are good. Sometimes those are bad. Like there have been stretches where they just take a lot of bad shots. The two Atlanta games are a big example of that, where they just weren't making anything. But also, I think why the Cavs field goal percentages are up, or at least part of it, is because they're able to manufacture better shots than they were last year. So when Caris is taking his 4 threes a game, 2 of them are open now instead of just like one of them being open, which changes dramatically what his field goal percentage is going to be. So I think some of it is that they're getting better shot quality. And I think they did get away at the beginning of the season with some pretty poor shot selection, but that seems to have tamed down a little bit. We'll see if they continue that for the rest of the season. But it seems like they're taking better shots now, especially in the flow of the offense. But yeah, I think the media is expecting the Cavs to come back down to earth because they just don't believe that the Cavs are actually this good. But if you watch them, I mean, they're a pretty convincing team when you watch them, right? And sometimes it feels like, not sometimes, a lot of times with like especially mainstream media, it feels like the most easy narrative wins, right? Somebody nationally sees that the Cavs have a great record. They don't have the time to watch all the games, so they just kind of peruse through the box score. They find a couple things to talk about, and they go, oh, the big thing to talk about is the fact that the Cavs have some outlier performances. That's what's going on. But if you watch this Cavs team, yeah, is what Caris LeVert is doing important to this team? Sure. But this team isn't winning all of these games off the strength of a good Caris LeVert performance because they're expecting more out of Caris and what he's able to give. It's kind of just bonus to what they're able to do with their core 4. And I think that's why the success that the Cavs have is sustainable. Next question comes from 6080, who says, how much do you think performing this well in the regular season will translate to the playoffs? And what is the one weakness you think we can still improve from last year? The biggest weakness I think you can improve from last year is the quality of minutes you get from your bench. The Cavs have way more options than they did last year and how to kind of use guys, and I think they've been able to manufacture lineups that work a lot better than they do now. So I think that's the biggest difference that you'll see. The Cavs are still going to have some issues against some wings. They're still not going to be the biggest team on the interior if they go up against teams that have bigs, right? Like you're still going to see wing players have pretty good games versus the Cavs. Post players may or may not have good games depending on what kind of effort we get from, well, not effort. Jared Allen always gives the effort, but what kind of how well Jared Allen's able to hold up physically versus like a Joel Embiid, who you probably ain't going to have to worry about in the playoffs this year because don't look like the Sixers going to do anything, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like a bigger body, right? Like a Jokic and stuff like that. So I think those issues are still there for the Cavs, but the bench problems, I think, were some of the biggest problems the Cavs had last year. Is the fact that they could not rely on anything but their starting five to score. And now that they're able to get more out of their bench, I think that's a big improvement. Why you see the Cavs kind of taking off. Also, like, the less you require out of Donovan Mitchell to win in the regular season, the more you can ask for of him in the postseason. I think that's a good thing. This is Cleveland back up big. Apparently, Allen and Mobley will never get hurt. Well, how do you want to prepare for that? Like, serious question. Like, do you want to, like, what and there's another question I want to kind of lump in here with this, right, from Evan, who says, what about bringing back Larry Nance Jr.? Now, I don't know what the price is for Larry Nance Jr. If you know what you think the price is for Larry Nance Jr., please let me know in the comment section. But I don't know what the price is for him, right? But my issue with, like, trading significant resources for a backup big when there's not really a need for a backup big right now, it's kind of a just in case thing, is the Cavs are going to have limited resources over the next few years. They're not going to have a ton of draft picks to move because they're all going to be tied up in the Donovan Mitchell Utah trade and the Ted Stepien rule. They're not going to have a ton of contracts to move because they locked up pretty much all their core players. So if we make a trade and you're the Cavs, you need to make sure that that trade is going to be integral to how you move going forward. And is Larry Nance Jr. somebody who is that integral to what you have going forward? Or if Evan or Jared get hurt, can you just get by for a week or two with George Niang at the 4 and Jared Allen at the 5, or Evan Mobley at the 5, or, you know, Dean Wade at the 4, and then playing George Niang minutes at the 3, or whatever you want to do to kind of replace that instead of having to trade for a whole nother big. So I get the idea, like, you want to have security behind those two players, but I don't know if it makes sense given the resources that the Cavs may not have going forward to spend some of that on backup center when I just don't think it's a super necessary move right now. You know, you got JT Thor, you got Tristan Thompson who could play out there some minutes. Like, you're not completely decimated back there behind those two players. Pat Blair says, will Caris LeVert ever drop his 3-point percentage back down to the mean? He's still shooting lights out from 3. I think Caris might be at a career high for this year, but he's definitely going to drop down from where he is. And the way that's going to look is he's going to have some nights like, you know, the last couple of nights where he's lights out from 3. And there are going to be some nights where you're like, you look at the stat sheet and like, damn, Caris went 1 of 7. You know, there's going to be those nights too. He's already had a couple of those nights. So Caris is going to continue to be streaky. I think we're getting a higher output of his streakiness because we're giving him better shots to shoot. But yeah, Caris is going to be a little streaky from here to there. And I think he'll probably get back to like a career high for him, but not like the super career high he's at right now. Smooch says, Merry Christmas, Q. How sustainable is Kenny Atkinson using a 10 and 11 player rotation? And will he continue using it in the playoffs? If not, who should be cut? So I look at it differently, right? Because I know that the Cavs are going to run an 8-man rotation in the playoffs. Most teams do. You don't ever run a 10, 11-man rotation in the playoffs. But I don't think that you're not going to use those 10 and 11 players in the playoffs because each series is going to have a different 8-man rotation. And some series are going to call for a lot of Isaac Okoro minutes. Some series might call for a lot of Dean Wade minutes, right, for some matchups. Some series might call for a lot of George Niang minutes, right, because you need that extra big who could shoot and some of that, like, weight in the interior. So they're going to use all of these players. And what I think this gives the Cavs is that ability to make adjustments that they didn't have the last 2 years, right? Like, we kind of got on JB about this, but I remember making the point, I feel bad for JB sometimes because he gets knocked for not making these adjustments, but he didn't have a roster where he could make a ton of adjustments. Kenny's at a little bit of a better place, even though the roster's pretty similar, and Kenny's just a better coach to be able to do this. But he can make adjustments, right? You got Ty Jerome you can flip in and out. You got Dean Wade, Max Strus. Like, you got different options to go with depending on what your matchup is going to be. And I think that's when having these 10, 11 players is going to come in clutch. It's kind of like the LeBron days, right? Where there'll be some series where Kyle Korver is getting a ton of minutes. There'll be some series where Shannon Fry is getting all the minutes, right? It kind of interchanges with all of that based on what your matchup is. And I think that's going to be something that makes the Cavs a better team, hopefully, in the playoffs. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Having a better night. Peace.